Have you ever felt like your life was a puzzle with too many missing pieces? Have you ever wondered why your journey has been so much more difficult than others around you? Why every step forward seems to come with unexpected challenges that others never seem to face? Have you ever looked at your struggles, your setbacks, your moments of deep pain, and asked God why you had to endure so much when others appeared to glide through life with ease? What if I told you that what you've been calling your brokenness was never brokenness at all? What if those fractures in your life, those moments that left you feeling shattered and defeated, were actually divine encryption? What if God wasn't allowing you to be broken, but was actually encoding something so powerful, so extraordinary within your spirit, that it could only be revealed through the process you've been walking through? Tonight, Chosen One, you're about to discover something that will completely transform how you see your past, your present, and your future. You're about to understand that every tear you've cried, every betrayal you've endured, every closed door you've faced, every moment when you felt completely alone and forgotten was not evidence of abandonment, but proof of selection. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. You weren't being broken down, you were being built up in ways that the natural eye cannot see and the natural mind cannot comprehend. Before we go deeper into this revelation, I want you to comment 777 below as a declaration that you're ready to see yourself through God's eyes rather than through the lens of your circumstances. And to those beautiful souls who have blessed this ministry through super thanks, your generosity is not just appreciated, it's anointed. You are partnering with heaven to deliver these messages to hearts that desperately need to hear them, and your reward is being multiplied in ways you cannot yet imagine. Now let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. What if the very experiences that convinced you that you were broken were actually the process by which God was installing something supernatural within your spirit? What if what felt like destruction was actually construction happening at a level so deep, so profound, that it could only take place through experiences that stripped away everything superficial and surface level about your life? Think about how encryption works in the digital world. When valuable information needs to be protected, it's not left out in the open where anyone can access it. Instead, it's encoded, scrambled, hidden within what appears to be meaningless data to the untrained eye. To someone who doesn't have the key, encrypted information looks like gibberish, like something broken or corrupted. But to those who understand the process and possess the proper codes, that seemingly meaningless data reveals treasures beyond imagination. This is exactly what God has been doing with your life. He hasn't been breaking you, He's been encrypting you. Every difficult season, every painful experience, every moment when life seemed to make no sense whatsoever, was God installing divine codes into your spirit. He was hiding treasures in the darkness of your trials, encoding supernatural gifts within your struggles, and programming divine purpose into your pain. Consider the story of Joseph, who endured betrayal by his own brothers, false accusations, imprisonment, and years of being forgotten in a dungeon. To anyone observing his life, it would have appeared that God had abandoned him, that his dreams were nothing more than youthful fantasies, and that he was destined for a life of obscurity and suffering. But God wasn't breaking Joseph, He was encrypting him. Every experience, every injustice, every moment of despair was installing leadership skills, developing character, and preparing him for a position of authority that would eventually save nations from famine. The same God who encrypted Joseph with wisdom through his trials, who encrypted David with courage through his battles with lions and bears and giants, who encrypted Moses with humility through 40 years in the wilderness, this same God has been encrypting you. Your struggles weren't random, they weren't punishment, and they certainly weren't evidence that you were broken beyond repair. They were divine installations, supernatural downloads, heavenly programming that was preparing you for a calling so significant that it required this level of preparation. Have you ever wondered why your life has been so much more intense than others around you? Why you've faced challenges that seem disproportionate to what your peers have experienced? Why you've endured emotional earthquakes while others seem to live on stable ground? It's because ordinary experiences create ordinary people, but extraordinary destinies require extraordinary preparation. God doesn't encrypt average individuals for average purposes. He only uses this intensive process on those who are designed to carry weight that would crush someone who hadn't been properly prepared. Every moment when you felt like you were coming apart was actually a moment when God was putting you together in a new way. Every season when you questioned your worth was a season when God was increasing your value through refinement. Every experience that left you feeling empty was creating space within you for something greater than what you had carried before. You weren't being diminished, you were being expanded. You weren't being weakened, you were being strengthened in ways that can't be measured by human standards. But here's what makes divine encryption different from human brokenness. Broken things lose their value and functionality, but encrypted things increase in both value and power. When something is truly broken, it becomes less than it was before. But when something is encrypted by God, it becomes exponentially more valuable and infinitely more powerful than its original state. The process might look like destruction to the untrained eye, but it's actually sophisticated construction happening at the spiritual level. Think about how a diamond is formed. Carbon, one of the most common elements on Earth, becomes one of the most precious and strongest substances known to mankind through a process of extreme pressure and heat that takes place deep beneath the Earth's surface. The conditions that create diamonds would destroy most other materials completely. But carbon isn't destroyed by this process, it's transformed. The very forces that would break other substances are the exact conditions needed to create something of extraordinary beauty and incredible strength. This is what God has been doing with your life. The pressure you've endured, the heat of the trials you've walked through, the deep places where you felt buried and forgotten, these weren't meant to destroy you. They were the precise conditions needed to transform you from something common into something precious, from something ordinary into something extraordinary. You weren't being crushed, you were being compressed into a harder, more beautiful, more valuable version of yourself. The enemy of your soul convinced you that those seasons of pressure meant you were broken, that those times of intense heat meant you were being punished, that those deep, dark places meant you were forgotten. But he lied to you because he knew that if you understood what was really happening, you would cooperate with the process instead of resisting it. He knew that if you realized you were being prepared for greatness instead of destroyed by circumstances, you would endure with hope instead of barely surviving with despair. Every tear you cried was watering seeds of compassion that would later bloom into a ministry of healing for others. Every betrayal you endured was developing discernment that would protect you and those you're called to lead from future deception. Every closed door was redirecting your path toward an open door that was specifically designed for someone with your unique combination of gifts and experiences. Every moment of loneliness was creating space in your heart for a deeper relationship with God than you could have developed if you had been constantly surrounded by people who met all your emotional needs. But the most beautiful aspect of divine encryption is that it's reversible, not in the sense that you go back to who you were before, but in the sense that everything that was hidden during the process of encoding is eventually revealed in its full glory. There comes a moment when the encryption is unlocked, when the codes are activated, when what appeared to be brokenness is revealed to be divine programming that was preparing you for supernatural operation. This is your season of decryption, chosen one. This is the moment when everything that seemed senseless begins to make perfect sense, when all the pieces of your puzzle start falling into place, when the scattered fragments of your experience suddenly form a beautiful picture that takes your breath away with its perfection and purpose. You're about to discover that every single thing you endured had a reason, every moment of pain had a purpose, and every season of struggle was strategically designed to prepare you for something so amazing that you couldn't have handled it without going through the preparation process first. Consider the story of the woman at the well who encountered Jesus. By all human standards, she was broken, divorced multiple times, living with a man who wasn't her husband, ostracized by her community, forced to draw water during the heat of the day to avoid the judgment of others. But Jesus didn't see a broken woman when he looked at her. He saw someone who had been encrypted with a testimony so powerful that it would reach an entire city. Her failures weren't evidence of brokenness, they were preparation for breakthrough. Her pain wasn't proof of punishment, it was preparation for purpose. After one conversation with Jesus, this woman who had been hiding in shame became bold enough to tell an entire city about the Messiah. Her past, which had been a source of humiliation, became the very thing that gave her credibility as a witness to God's transforming power. What she thought disqualified her actually positioned her to impact lives in ways that someone with a perfect track record never could have achieved. This is what happens when divine encryption is revealed. What appeared to be your greatest weakness becomes your most powerful strength. What felt like your deepest failure becomes your highest platform. What seemed like your most shameful secret becomes your most anointed testimony. The very experiences that convinced you that you were broken become the proof that you were being prepared for something extraordinary. Even in the business world, we see this principle at work. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs are those who failed multiple times before achieving breakthrough. Colonel Sanders was rejected by over 1,000 restaurants before one finally agreed to use his chicken recipe. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination and having no good ideas. Stephen King's first novel was rejected 30 times before being published. What appeared to be repeated failure was actually a process of refinement, preparation, and education that equipped them for eventual massive success. But divine encryption goes far deeper than business success or worldly achievement. God has been encoding you with spiritual authority, supernatural wisdom, divine compassion, and heavenly perspective that can only be developed through experiences that stretch you beyond your natural capacity. He's been installing gifts and abilities within your spirit that will allow you to operate in realms that most people never access, to solve problems that have no natural solutions, and to bring healing to wounds that human medicine cannot touch. You've been in a spiritual laboratory where God has been conducting experiments with your faith, testing the limits of your endurance, and discovering just how much divine nature He can pack into one human vessel. Every test you passed increased your capacity. Every trial you endured expanded your spiritual storage space. Every challenge you overcame upgraded your spiritual operating system to handle greater levels of God's power and presence. This is why you've never been satisfied with surface-level spirituality or shallow relationships. This is why you've always felt called to something deeper, something more meaningful, something that truly matters. Your spirit recognizes that you were designed for extraordinary purpose, that you carry extraordinary gifts, and that you're destined for extraordinary impact. You were never meant to fit into ordinary boxes or follow ordinary paths, because ordinary was never part of your divine programming. The loneliness you've experienced wasn't rejection, it was protection. God was keeping you separate from influences that would have diluted your calling or distracted you from your purpose. The delays you've endured weren't denials, they were divine timing, ensuring that you would arrive at your destination when you were fully prepared to handle what was waiting for you there. The closed doors weren't punishments. They were redirections, guiding you toward opportunities that were specifically calibrated for someone with your unique encryption. Think about how Jesus himself was encrypted through suffering. Isaiah prophesied that he would be a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, that he would be despised and rejected, wounded and bruised. To anyone observing his life, especially during his final days, it would have appeared that God had abandoned him, that his mission had failed, and that his claims about being the Son of God were false. But the cross that looked like defeat was actually victory in disguise. The death that appeared to be the end was actually the beginning of eternal life for all who would believe. Your seasons of suffering haven't been evidence of God's absence. They've been proof of his presence working at levels too deep for surface observation. Your moments of feeling forsaken haven't meant you were abandoned. They've meant you were being prepared for a level of intimacy with God that can only be developed in the furnace of affliction. Your experiences of walking through valleys haven't been punishment. They've been preparation for mountaintop ministry that will impact generations. But here's what you must understand about divine encryption. It's not a one-time event, it's an ongoing process. Just as computer software requires regular updates to function at optimal levels, your spiritual programming continues to be upgraded as you grow in your calling and expand in your influence. What you've experienced so far has been foundational installation, but there are additional levels of encoding that will take place as you step into greater dimensions of your purpose. This means that when new challenges arise, when unexpected trials appear on your horizon, when circumstances once again seem to make no sense, you can face them with confidence, knowing that God is simply installing the next level of programming that you'll need for your next assignment. You're not regressing, you're advancing. You're not being broken down again, you're being built up for something even greater than what you've experienced before. The key to thriving during seasons of divine encryption is understanding that resistance prolongs the process while cooperation accelerates it. When you fight against the circumstances that God is using to develop you, when you spend your energy complaining about the unfairness of your situation rather than asking what God wants to teach you through it, you actually extend the duration of the difficult season. But when you surrender to the process, when you trust that God knows what he's doing, even when you don't understand the methodology, the encryption process becomes much more efficient and effective. This doesn't mean you should be passive during difficult times or that you shouldn't take action to improve your circumstances when possible. It means that you approach your challenges with the understanding that God is working through them for your benefit, that there's a purpose hidden within your pain, and that your current situation is temporary preparation for your permanent assignment. Prayer becomes different when you understand divine encryption. Instead of just asking God to remove the difficulty, you also ask him to help you extract every lesson, develop every gift, and receive every upgrade that he wants to install through the experience. You begin to see your trials as divine classrooms rather than just unfortunate circumstances. You start to view your struggles as spiritual boot camp rather than random suffering. Your entire perspective on your past changes when you realize you are being encrypted rather than broken. Those relationships that hurt you weren't just painful experiences. They were teaching you about the kind of love you're called to give and receive. Those financial struggles weren't just hardships. They were developing your ability to trust God as your provider and preparing you to be a wise steward of the abundance that's coming. Those health challenges weren't just physical problems, they were increasing your compassion for others who suffer and developing your faith for supernatural healing. Even your mistakes and failures take on new meaning when viewed through the lens of divine encryption. God didn't waste your errors, he encoded lessons into them. He didn't ignore your poor choices. He extracted wisdom from them that you couldn't have gained any other way. He didn't condemn you for your weaknesses. He used them to develop humility and dependence that would keep you grounded when he begins to demonstrate his strength through you. This is why David could write psalms of praise in the midst of running for his life, why Paul could sing in prison, why Job could worship after losing everything he held dear. They understood that their circumstances weren't evidence of God's displeasure. They were proof of his preparation. They weren't being abandoned, they were being advanced. They weren't experiencing random suffering, they were undergoing divine development. Your breakthrough is not just coming, it's already here. The moment you stop seeing yourself as broken and start recognizing yourself as encrypted, everything changes. Your confidence returns because you realize that your struggles haven't diminished your value, they've increased it exponentially. Your hope is renewed because you understand that your delays haven't been denials, they've been divine timing. Your joy is restored because you recognize that your pain hasn't been purposeless, it's been pregnant with possibility. The world is about to witness the unveiling of who you really are. All the encryption that has taken place in secret is about to be revealed in public. The gifts that were developed in private are about to be demonstrated in front of audiences. The wisdom that was gained through personal experience is about to be shared with those who desperately need to hear your unique perspective. The authority that was forged in the fire of testing is about to be displayed in arenas where it can make a significant difference. You are not broken. You never were broken, and you never will be broken. You are encrypted by the master programmer himself, encoded with supernatural ability and programmed for extraordinary purpose. The process that prepared you for greatness is complete, and now it's time for the world to see what God has been working on behind the scenes of your life. Every person who ever made you feel like you were too much or not enough, everyone who dismissed your dreams or questioned your calling, everyone who wrote you off during your seasons of struggle, they were all wrong about you. They were looking at the encryption process and mistaking it for brokenness. They were observing the construction and assuming it was destruction. They couldn't see what God was building because they were focused on what appeared to be falling apart. But you know better now. You understand that you were never coming apart. You were coming together in ways that no human architect could design and no earthly contractor could build. You were being assembled by divine hands according to heavenly blueprints for purposes that will impact eternity. The delays, the detours, the difficulties, they were all part of a master plan so intricate and sophisticated that only God could have conceived it, and only someone with your unique encryption could execute it. As we conclude this revelation, I want you to make a declaration over your life that will activate every code that has been installed, unlock every gift that has been encrypted, and release every purpose that has been programmed into your spirit. Declare with me, I am not broken, I am encrypted by God. My struggles were not punishment, they were preparation. My pain was not pointless, it was pregnant with purpose. My delays were not denials, they were divine timing. I am ready to step into the fullness of everything God has encoded within me. To those who have supported this ministry through super thanks, your generosity is helping to decrypt God's plans for countless lives around the world. You are not just giving to a ministry, you are investing in a movement that is revealing divine purpose to a generation that has been convinced they were broken beyond repair. If this message has opened your eyes to see your life from God's perspective, I encourage you to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share it with others who need to understand that they too have been encrypted rather than broken. Leave a comment below telling us what God has revealed to you about your own divine encryption. Your testimony might be the key that unlocks understanding for someone else who is still believing the lie that they're broken. Remember, chosen one, you are not a rough draft that needs to be rewritten. You are not a prototype that needs to be perfected. You are not a broken vessel that needs to be repaired. You are a masterpiece that has been intentionally designed, carefully crafted, and specifically encrypted for a purpose so extraordinary that it required every single experience you've endured to prepare you for it. Your time of unveiling has arrived. The world is ready to see what God has been working on. You are ready to step into the fullness of your calling. The encryption process is complete, and now it's time for the decryption to begin. You are not broken, you are beautiful. You are not shattered, you are sacred. You are not damaged, you are divine. You are encrypted by God, and now it's time for the world to witness the glory of His handiwork in your life.